Welcome back. Sulaiman Arigbabu joins us now. He's an environmentalist. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Chamberlain.
Well, I do know environmentalists, including environmental activists, many of them pushing for one thing or the other about the environment year on year in this country. But now, looking back and looking at where we currently are, what strikes you? Do you get any sense that we've got a direction or certain things are going on the way you expect them to?
Thank you. Perhaps I think the most important thing is to say that the awareness, that the citizens' consciousness about the relationship between us and our environment has kind of increased. What has that translated into is another issue. But because of the experience of the last few years, the whitewater flooding and some things that, you know, our relationship with our environment has brought home to us, and the things we see via the news media, has kind of increased awareness and concern for the environment. We need to now help people from moving away from that fear, state of fear that, oh, you're shocked, you can't do anything, you're terrified, to how you empower them to positively engage the environment, because nobody's going to fix it wherever we are. We as human beings, we're the one to help fix our environment. Nature is going to always be there. And it's going to do what it has always done. What we have been doing as human beings is that we have been inhibiting nature's capacity to strike a balance, you know, by our actions.
And that's a very key one. I mean, advertisers will tell you that if an advert doesn't move you to action, that 8K principle, you haven't really done that much. Yeah. But to what extent would you say we've been able to internalize at least a little information out there, to the extent of us using the information we have or moving us to action? How have we dealt with that?
We have not seen much of that. And why we've not seen much of that, perhaps it's not just because there's not been enough information, but the enablers to make people act. Okay, so I come around and tell people it's important that you don't trash your plastic bottles. These are actually resources. And then you have people stacking, you know, bags of plastics and nobody to pick them up. So I tell you, separate your waste, and you do that. You get the plastic bags and you bring it outside, and the trash man comes and just lumps everything together, and then your neighbors are not doing the same. Over time, you kind of feel like, look, I'm not going to make any difference. So what we need to do to empower people is to help them with the enablers, those things, those services that makes what the new consciousness makes them be able to put them into action. And that is what, at local government level, at state level, it needs to happen. Otherwise, after a while, there's disincentive. For instance, you say to people, you know, you should reduce your energy consumption by using compact fluorescent. Now we're talking about low emission diode.
If they have prepaid meters, they will listen.
If they have prepaid meters. Because you're like, okay, whether I use it or not, I'm going to get crazy bills. So these are things, these are the enablers we're talking about. And not just that, you buy a bulb for 1,000 naira, and after 2-3 weeks it's off. And you'll be like, with this I can buy.
That must be the fake one.
Yes. So who stops the fake ones from coming in? How do we ensure that when we tell people that you should use products that either, for your plumbing, for instance, helps to conserve water, for your energy, helps to conserve energy,
let's not go
that
to
you
solar,
don't
yes.
buy the fake things?
Let's not go to solar.
Because it's a disincentive.
You know, talking about this, I think we have to come back to the people. That was why I was about that with the minister. The people, you've seen here, for instance, in our cities, when drains or drainages are cleared, yeah, you see the debris, 99% of them are plastic,
yes,
nylons,
yes.
And we still talk about this unwholesome culture and attitude of the people. The environment can't just be polluted or go bad without the interference of the humans who live in it. Have we done it well? Done well in enlightening the people, letting them know that, look, you can actually see this? Because you just said something about the waste disposal man or woman who at the end of the day lumps it up, even if you did separate your waste. They just don't know which is toxic, which is biodegradable, which is not. From where do we start this whole enlightenment from?
Yes, again, going back to the people, perhaps one of the ways we have failed in a city like Lagos, for instance, that we're not doing well, is that you need to get people to take responsibilities for their waste, for whatever it is, services that we're going to use. Government is not a Father Christmas. Government is just supposed to help us manage our resources to our services. So if, for instance, we did a small research in a small area in Akoka a few years back, and we realized that most of the houses there, Akoka, just around the campus area, most of the people around there were not paying for waste. So if you don't pay for waste, you are not really compelled to want to make sure that your waste is carted away at the appropriate time. And we saw the waste vehicle was too big to maneuver some areas, so it comes on the major road and rings a bell. If you are home, if you are not, you have to find an alternative way to dispose this. But when people pay, they are going to demand for service. Not only will the state or the local government have the resources to provide the service, but then people, if I'm paying for something, and this is the shift for Nigeria, the oil money is no longer there. So now this government has told us we are going to be taking money from you to provide you services. So we also have to be ready to demand for those services after we have paid. So this is one of the ways to get people to be responsible. Right now, the way we relate with the environment is just like, look, somebody else will take care of it.
You know, sorry, Chumba, because just on the issue of waste disposal, that has snowballed into what we've seen about flooding, about, you know, a whole lot of issues being caused to our environment. It goes back to the people and the government and those who should tell the people what exactly to do. Looking at Lagos, for instance, and the amount of plastics and nylons, you know, rubber bags and stuff you see, what should we be doing at this point in time? Because even if you properly dispose them, they still end up in a place that are not properly, you know, recycled by these people. What ever happened to the plan of the government of Lagos State about a recycling plant which they have built in a particular area?
It's a three-way thing. It's government, it's private sector, and then it's the people. What government needs to do to get the people to act is a lot more enlightenment, especially with children. Children can make a whole lot of difference. If you tell children that you bring this number of plastic bottles and get a sticker, just something as small as a sticker, and you're building a culture of waste separation, of caring for the environment. So when you're able to get it from source, that things are properly sorted, things are properly disposed, then you can. Government has a recycling project somewhere around Ojo, but then there are private sector initiatives. It's not something that when you have so much of it, because we don't even have enough plastics to sell. Unfortunately, countries like China are coming here to cut away our plastic. And this is something that you use in the textile industry, in the plastic industry. You use it for even in the construction industry. The technology has gone to that extent. So the problem we are having is that government perhaps is not providing enough incentive for the private sector to really push its money there. Also, there's not been sufficient mobilization of citizens. Yes, there are people that if you talk to them for a millennia without enforcement, you're not going to get them to act. But children, for instance, you do things around schools, around private sector establishments. This will be where you have the multiply effect. People will take this culture from wherever you are giving it to them to other places. So we need to have action at the level of government needs to provide the enabling environment, provide those facilities that makes these things happen. You can't leave everything to private sector. There are some private sector initiatives and some non-governmental initiatives that goes to pick plastic. But as much as they are picking, you can't really see the difference in the city.
Maybe I should just jump in and ask that. How much do you think the Ministry of Environment can achieve? Because these projects and plans are there to be implemented in states.
Yeah. Not only just the Ministry of Environment at state level, it's also a function of what are the environmental health department of local governments. What are they doing? What are we doing?
I'm talking about Ministry of Environment.
At the federal ministry. Yeah. The most that the federal Ministry of Environment can do really is to mobilize cities, mobilize other governments, give some level of coordination. Because at the end of the day, it's still a federal, I mean, this is one of those things that is in the purview of states and local government. But you can give leadership, you can give incentives, you can encourage private sector to help. You can coordinate things that can happen at the state level and that can percolate to the local government level. But really, and then you can also facilitate investment, because what we have is that there's no sufficient investment in the recycling sector, in waste management. So you can actually attract investment. You can also, with proper planning, proper documentation, showing that you are disciplined, you can also attract development funds, grants, and all of that that can help, to give the sector a rapid growth such that it can be big enough to take care of the. And then also we need to say this: there is need to actually reduce the waste. Most of the things that we so freely throw out, I'm sure if we pay per kg of waste, we will learn to reduce.
When you say pay per kg, how would that work? I was going to ask you the question of legislation. When you say the government needs to provide the enabling environment,
yes.
What exactly do you mean by enabling environment? Legislation, funding, punishment, reward?
Yes.
What kind of...
All of that, you have said it all. Government needs to look at its laws. Government also needs to provide funding support to those who are doing enlightenment, those who are, if you support a company that is going into recycling, you give them some tax incentives or all those things that help them to get started. If you also provide those services, clearing those, collecting the waste. We know Lagos has a public-private partnership arrangement, but the truth is that it's not so effective as it should be. It's something that they need to improve upon, because you still see the waste managers come around and lump everything together. That's not what you see in other climes.
So they employ the waste managers, but they are not properly educated. Is that what you're implying?
And even if they were, if I don't sort my waste at my level in my house, there's nothing really for them to do. And if I was doing that, and I also do not see them ready to collect it in that manner, then I'm going to stop. So it's a two-way thing.
And just give them everything.
And just give them everything.
Altogether.
So this is where, and for instance, let me just veer to something like trees, for instance. The Lekki concessionaire, the company, under the Lagos State Environmental Sanitation Network consortium of NGOs, we approached them and said, hey, in doing this road, you guys have cleared so many trees. But we can identify a corridor where you can actually invest and plant trees and do some remediation, clean up some of your carbon footprint. And they said to us, why would we do that? It's just 20 naira in the law for cutting down trees. Yeah, Lagos State has another law that says that every new development should reserve 30% of the space for greening, but such laws are not being enforced. So government needs to come in with its enforcement.
20 naira for cutting down a tree.
It's from the Land Use Act.
So that needs to be reviewed as quickly as possible.
It needs to be reviewed.
Because I realize that everything is about the information. Look at those people in Nigeria's northern region who go into, mining, and we have seen the case of lead poison, and you see that this is happening to the peasants, to the ordinary person who is there, who is trying to get this gold, and at the end of the day, sell it at a very, ridiculous small amount of money. But he gets ill, he falls ill. Do you think that they are aware of the dangers inherent in such mining activities, just as some people still throw their dirt and waste in a moving car in cities like Lagos?
Of course, there is a thin line. There is the line of indiscipline. There is a line of callousness in commerce. But like the question you asked the Honorable Minister, if you tell the people in Ogoni that don't drink this water, is there alternative? So where there is no alternative for people, where somebody thinks, hey, there's no way I'm going to make a living unless I engage in... And the people who are exposed to the risk are not the ones who are making the money out of it. They are just people who are eking out a living. So when the situation of people is desperate, there's very little you can tell them. So this is where you need to provide alternative means of survival to people. Education helps. Enforcing your laws also helps. Mining is not something that is, for instance, it's not something that is done out of sight. It's there, it's visible.
There's a picture that some people paint that protecting the environment or managing the environment is very expensive. You're telling them to go renewable in terms of energy consumption. It's expensive to buy a solar panel, or indeed everything is free, but it's expensive. So is it really expensive?
If you look at
I'm talking about in the part of the citizens.
Yes, if you look at the alternative, it's actually not expensive. It's an enlightened self-interest that we need to talk about here. Of course, there's always the huge initial investment, which many people cannot afford. And that is where government and private sector can come in and help take care of the initial investment so that people can pay gradually, because at the end of the day, it is cheaper. Is it healthier for the environment? Just look at the cost of having a clean, mosquito-less environment, for instance, to the cost of dealing with malaria and the rest of it. It's enormous.
Clear picture. Sulaiman Arigbabu is an environmentalist. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, we'll be back in just a moment. Don't go away.